This story, one of the saddest stories I've ever covered. Elijah McClain, the young man who was killed by paramedics, of all people. I'm going to take you back to that video, and now I have an update as to the wheels of justice starting to move in the right direction. Here it is.
The family's attorney says McClain was walking home after buying iced tea from a corner store when this call about a suspicious person was made to the AURORA PD in Colorado.
He puts his hands up. I don't know. He looks sketchy. He might be a good person or a bad person.
3 officers responded to the call. McClain is seen walking on the sidewalk when officers approach him.
Stop. Stop.
One officer is heard telling McClain to stop. Things escalate when McClain allegedly attempted to grab an officer's gun. The officers then subdue him to the ground and place him in a carotid control hold, a move that restricts blood flow to the brain. McClain begs for relief, even uttering those eerily too familiar words. First responders arrive shortly after and administer ketamine, an anesthetic meant to rapidly tranquilize.
It's standard protocol for the paramedics to inject ketamine.
McClain went into cardiac arrest on the way to the hospital, where he stayed 5 days before ultimately being taken off life support. A coroner determined his cause of death undetermined.
His autopsy has now been amended. Let's put up a picture of Elijah McClain. I want to remind you that this young man was so sweet that he would play music for animals in a shelter. He was one of the kindest souls I've ever covered. In the amended report, it reads, and I quote, "I believe this tragic fatality is most likely the result of ketamine," the report said, adding McClain received a higher dosage of the sedative than he should have, meaning the paramedics broke protocol. Simply put, this dosage of ketamine was too much for this individual, and it resulted in an overdose. They did not give him the protocol amount of ketamine. They made him OD. They gave him enough to kill him. Remember, they initially avoided prosecution until members of the media, myself included, made this a story. They said there was no foul play here. It was just an accident, an unfortunate situation is how the local prosecutor characterized it initially. The original autopsy report, signed November 7th, 2019, said McClain's cause of death could not be determined. But now, new information has emerged during a grand jury investigation that prompted the state attorney general's office to order a second autopsy. Now, who makes up a grand jury? Who? You do. You do. We do. The citizens are the reason that justice is now starting to happen in this case. But in order to even sit on that grand jury, what do you have to be? A registered voter. You have to be a registered voter to even be called for a grand jury. There's more. The amended report comes 1 month after Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser announced that 2 police officers, 1 former officer, and 2 paramedics in the Denver suburb of Aurora have been indicted and will be charged with 1 count each of manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide, among other allegations in the 32 count indictment. Put up their pictures. The men involved in this indictment have been identified as Aurora, Colorado officers Randy Rodema and Nathan Woodyard, former officer Jason Rosenblatt, and paramedics Peter Sachunik and Jeremy Cooper. All five had now been indicted for the death of Elijah McClain. Now, I want to say this. Remember, there was a time in this country where one prosecutor would come up with a statement and say, listen, I understand this is tragic, but there's no crime. And typically we would just move on, trusting that the elected prosecutor or the individual in charge of investigating the case was doing us a favor by telling us the truth rather than trying to hide and manipulate the facts. Those days are no more. Because of a citizen-led grand jury, there has been a real investigation. There has been real evidence uncovered, and now there are real indictments for justice for this young male. Beautiful soul. We're going to continue to provide updates as they come. I know you know about this story, Rickey. Give us your thoughts.
Dr. Richey, I would be glad when a day come where the person that actually called the police should be have some kind of accountability, because people weaponizing police and using the police like a dog to sick police on innocent Black people and minorities and people of color is just absolutely wrong. And I think they hold some responsibility, because what is suspicious? What did he do wrong? Trayvon Martin was walking, minding his own business, and he's dead. And now this kid right here is dead. And I think that the person that called the police, like I said, should have some kind of accountability and responsibility for this happening to this young man.
Yeah, you are so right. You are so spot on, Rickey. We've talked about it on the program when there's a proximate direct cause of death because someone called 911 when there was absolutely no reason to. There has to be a penalty. If there's no penalty, there's not even a civil penalty usually. When there's no penalty, there's no question, there's no hesitation to weaponize 911 in this way against Black people in particular. All right, we're going to bring you updates as that prosecution continues.